This video shows steps to execute to crash activities using overtime option. And so this is the same example that's used in other videos. The status here is that status has been updated to the status date of August 25, and we have leveled the schedule after the status after making all the status updates. So our current completion is 1126, and if I add the baseline view, so our completion, we have to move our completion from 1126 back to 1110. And so we are going to crash using overtime. So for that, we'll go back to our task usage view. And the two activities that we are going to crash are basically on the resource critical path after the status state, which is activity 35, followed by activity 40. And then the third activity is really the activity 36, but that's very small activity to begin with. And so rather than crash that one, we'll crash these larger ones. So now we can go to our task usage view. So on task usage view, we see these two activities, 36, we wanted 35. So 35 and activity 40, those are the two activities we'll crash. Let's move our right view, or actually let's first add columns. Since we are going to use overtime to reduce the duration, we'll insert a column called overtime work. So this is how much overtime we are going to allow. So we are not going to change any assignment units. So let's make the overtime work a little bit larger. We can see it clearly. And we'll add an overtime row here. So click on detail styles. Hit in there, click on O to go to items starting with O. Hit overtime show. Yeah, okay. So that shows us now another row here with each resource of overtime work. And we'll also change, we'll change the overtime work to be more accurate and to be able to understand what are these daily values. Instead of months, we'll make these values show up in hours. So for that, we'll go into options, schedule, and change this month's work is entered to hours. Okay, so now we see the resources are working 8 hours per day. And let's scroll this to our status state, because this is an in progress activity. So if we go to status state of August 25th, it's in this here. So you see up till the status date, we had the resources working until 8 hours for 8 hours a day. Beyond that, it's 766 per day. And less than 8 hours. And this is because of the variances that have been reported and implemented on this remaining duration of the activity. Per the variances, we had a +5 variance on time and a -5% variance on work. And so essentially that's saying that we are doing work, but in longer time. And so that's what these numbers reflect, that the duration is longer, but each day we are only accomplishing 7.66 hours of work. These variances do interfere with the calculations, as you'll see shortly. But we are looking for getting close to the numbers we have calculated outside of Microsoft Project in Excel. And so let's go to Excel. And so in Excel, we have activity 2 is really the activity that has not started yet. Activity 1 is our activity that is in progress activity that we have copied this information from my MS Project file here. So clearly the overtime options are not the ones to take because of the cost, but to demonstrate the process here on how would you, if the cost were lower than additional resources, then how would you go about implementing that? We are going through this exercise. And so we'll go, given that we have to reduce by 11 days, 11.25 days. And so we are going to go for these options of overtime, which are giving us the largest reduction. So this one with 20 hours a week, which is we are adding 4 hours a day, will give us a reduction of 7.47 days. So we'll go ahead and I've added a row here, which is OT, overtime work per resource in hours. And that's to make it more accurate, because when we enter the data in months, some of the rounding errors creep in. So we'll go with this 147.22 hours of work that we'll add here for the so 147.22. As soon as we enter, you notice the number changed here on the right. So now, according to this entry, it's saying we are allowing 5.87 hours of overtime per day. And remember, the original work was 7.66. So what number up here is shown is the addition of that. So this work of 13.53 hours includes the regular time work as well as overtime work. And overtime work is shown as how much of that is overtime work. We'll do the same thing for the other resource. And so that's that. And I think I might have missed doing the yes, I did. Okay, so I'll undo these changes and let's make this. We first need to set the task as fixed work. Okay, and now make those changes. So 147.22, 147.22. So how I was able to tell that the setting is not fixed work, because the duration didn't change. So now that it's fixed work, as we increase the work, overtime work, since the total work remains the same, the duration reduces. So now this is fixed work, and this is saying whatever the original work was, the work stayed the same, but we know there would be a big loss of efficiency because of going to overtime. And so let's look at what's our new work now. Because of the loss of efficiency, you see efficiency drops down to 77%. And so the work, we need to put in more work to get the same amount of work. So we have it in months, 5.52. So we can just enter that, 5.52, but we have to make sure we write the units, months. And Microsoft Project translates that into 883.2 hours. And so once we did that, you see the remaining duration again changed. And now you notice on this side, well, they are somewhat more reasonable numbers. We allowed basically 20 hours a week of overtime. So this, which is 4 hours a day. This is now close to 4 hours a day. But as I said, the variances are kind of changing our calculations here. So let's go back and see the duration we were expecting to see was 36.81. And so if we come back here, put that 36.81, oops, it's not taking it here, 36.81 days. And so you see, once we put that number, now we are getting our expected 4 hours a day overtime that we are allowing. So in this case, only in this case, because the activity was in progress and our variances modified some of the numbers, we are actually overriding what was the duration calculated by Microsoft Project. But even before overriding, you notice that value was kind of close, 37 point something, while we are at 36 point something. And we make this adjustment to make the overtime work numbers work well. So that's for an activity which was in progress. And so we are just doing that modification for the remaining duration. Let's talk about the case of the other activity, 40, down here. And so let's remember to change the type first to fixed work. Okay. And on this one, let's go back to our Excel file where we have calculated the efficiency losses. And so in this one, again, we'll go for the max here, days reduced. Oh, this is additional resource, sorry. Days reduced are basically we're getting 3.33, so we'll get about 10 point something days of reduction. And so here we are adding 20 hours a week or 4 hours a day. And so that way, over the duration of the activity of 4 weeks, we are adding 66.67. Actually, not 4 weeks. 4 weeks was the original duration. With the modification, the duration drops out to 3.33 with overtime. And so that means over 3.33 weeks, we are adding 66.67 hours of overtime for each resource. So that's what we'll add here. Oh, actually, also let's bring the activity in view. So function F5 40. So that shows that it is other than the day it started on, which is started partial on Monday, but then we have 8 hours of work every day, and now we are going to add 66.67 hours. And so right now it shows as 5.71, but first let's complete. We have to do it for both resources. 5.71 because it brought down the duration to 2.58 months. And now we'll go back and change the work. And so work is going up because the efficiency loss to 2.5 months. And so let's do that. 2 point, whoops. Control Z out of that one. That's this. 2.5 months. Okay, so now you see the numbers look right on the side because our calculation, and that kind of verifies our calculations were correct. Now each day we have 4 hours of overtime, and the total work hours are 12, so 8 hours of regular time and 4 hours of overtime. And so the numbers work out since there's not now changes in variances and so on that we did for the in-progress activity, for activity that is in future compared to the status state. These calculations work out pretty exact. The duration it's showing as 0.83 month, and so if we convert that back, so down here we are converting that to 0.83 times 20, so from month to days, and that gives us 16.6, which is exactly at our reduced duration of 16.67. Let's see, actually, if that might not work, but yeah, okay, that's the trouble. So you can see if we had the specified things in days, we would have seen better numbers there. Actually, that's okay. So going back to then our Excel, not our Excel, our Gantt chart, we see here again that we have these gaps now occur because we made the duration shorter with overtime, and because the leveling delays that were sitting in there, we have these gaps. And so to remove these gaps, we can level the schedule after the status state. And so for doing that, we'll go to our resource and leveling options. We see that is set for doing leveling after the status state, so that's okay. We'll go and select level resources, and we'll just level these resources which are involved in these activities. So those are assistant PM, press control, software architect, and tech writer. So those are the 3 resources that are involved in these 3 activities. Those are the only ones we are going to level. And click level now. And it complains about something. It's the tech writer is involved in some of the resource other activity, not in these on the resource critical path. So we'll just skip that part and skip again and skip again. Well, Okay, we stop. So yeah, so in this case, Microsoft project does behave a little bit funny. Even after skipping, it's when you stop, you would think that it's going to give up on leveling, but it does not. It does skip the right activities and does level the activities you did want to level, or maybe not. Okay, let's. I'm saying maybe not because these two activities seem to be overlapped. Let's see from the dates here. This is ending at 10:15. No, ending at 10:19, and this activity up here is 10:15, starting at 10:15. So the leveling didn't happen well in this case. So let's clear leveling. Okay. Oh, that was not the right thing to do. Control Z. Control Z. Okay, so that brought us back to our original status after adding over time. So let's try leveling one more time, and what I'll do is, now we already took care of other, we were only leveling these three resources. So let's go look at our resource sheet. Why did this here? So there are other resources which are acting here, which are over allocated. Let's not worry about that. Let's just look at how our peaks are. Software Architect had a 103 peak earlier, and so that might be interfering with that. So that we'll just change that. I want no programmer we are not even dealing with, but let's change that. And so these two over allocations are really two activities overlapping. So that's the overlap we are trying to get rid of, not these minor increases because of the status updates. This one is, let's make it 102. And so these are the ones that we want to address. So let's, after doing this, let's go back and see if we do better this time. So task, Gantt chart. And back to resource, make sure leveling options are correct. Okay. Level resource, assistant PM, click control, software architect, and still holding control, tech writer, hit level now. Let's complain about this other activity, skip. And interestingly, it's complaining about the same activity again. Okay. And so now this seemed to have worked better. And you see the hammock tasks are taking some time to catch up on updating, but yeah, and it just did. And so you notice now there is no overlap among these three activities. Interestingly, it complains in the leveling. It was complaining about this activity is test install systems, which does not even include tech writer. So we'll not dig into that right now. Let's just focus on that we have achieved our leveling that we were looking for. And now if you look at the activities, so this activity up here ends at 10:15, 3:29, and the following activity starts at 10:15, 20, 23, 29, so that there's no overlap. This ends at 11:09, 2020 at 11:49, and print guides starts then at the exact same time, so then that there's no overlap. Once this activity finishes, this activity starts, and then finally the end happens at 11:11 at 11:49. So you see, visually it looks like we have almost achieved our goal of hitting the hitting our baseline finish, but we are just a half day off. So if we look at, well, we'll have to add a column called baseline finish. That was not what we were trying to add. Insert column, baseline finish. So for baseline finish, we should have finished at the end of the day on 10th of November. We are finishing at noon on 11th of November. So we still get quite close, do not quite achieve our target. But this was just to illustrate how to do this with overtime. Going in, we knew with overtime options, we were not going to achieve possibly the reduction as well as it was too costly an option. But the idea here was to just demonstrate how to achieve crashing using overtime. I'll stop here.